know what I would want people to take away if they're Christians is I would want them to know that everything that went on in my life of faith was not, it didn't just come down out of the ether, that there've been people praying for me my whole life. I don't know who they are, but I know people have been praying for me. And I think of the huge privilege it is to be a child of God, to be able to give that to your children, but also to walk in the light wherever you are, wherever God sends me. I'm there because he's put me there. It's not random, it's not coincidence, and it's not my choice. I want to walk where Jesus puts the path in front of me. And I'm very grateful for the people that he's brought into my life because of that. So my name is Nicky Van Kiel. Van Kiel not because I'm Dutch, but my husband was Dutch. And I come from England, and I grew up in a small village, and actually everything in my youth was perfect until the age of 7. I come from a secular family, but in England there's a state religion, that's the Church of England. So when I went to school, for example, the Church of England owned the school that I went to. That was the only school in the village. So I did hear every morning, I heard there was always a piece of the Bible was read. We always sang a hymn or two. And I believe that the shared prayer from the Anglican Church was also said. At Christmas we did a nativity play. So it was very much part of English life when I was younger. The Church of England had its place. So that was at school, where I also had religious education lessons, Bible lessons, but it was something that was never talked about at home. Not that it was taboo or anything, it was just, in many houses like my own, you didn't talk about either money, politics, or religion. Those were the things that were not spoken of, and nobody did speak about it ever. So on Christmas Day, we usually went as part of our activity to church, but not always. I think if we had nothing else to do. And for the rest, I listened to those stories, and actually, even I remember as a young child, I never doubted the truth of what I heard from the Bible. I never thought that it wasn't true. And I think even as a young child, I was aware of God's presence in my life. But it was more an understanding that was given to me by people who were not believers. I didn't see any active faith in anybody. So that was my background. I got married quite young. I was 21 when I got married, and I left a troubled home in England to come and live in Holland, which I thought, freedom. I'm away from all my troubles. But unfortunately, the troubles go with you because they're all in your head. So my first few years of marriage were difficult, not in my relationship with my husband, but simply that I couldn't shed all the trauma of my youth. And the trauma came from losing a mother at the age of 7. So everything that happened after that was a big mess in my family. And I thought I was escaping from them, but I wasn't. I took it with me, and I do remember those first years of marriage being very difficult. And my plan was to have children and to be the best mother ever. Where all the mistakes that had been made in my family, I was going to better them. And unfortunately, I found out that I was really no better than my own mother. Or stepmother, I should say. I was no better. I had a lot of anger inside me, a lot of dissatisfaction, I had self-pity, jealousy, all these things, and I was fighting a non-stop battle in my head with my stepmother. So that doesn't make for a very good relationship for a mother with her own children. And I had 2 children at the time, and I thought, I can't do this. Please take the children away. I'm sure someone else is better at looking after these children than me. So, still thinking that I believed in God, I had no relationship with him, but there was a neighbour who invited me to a Bible study. And I said to her, I will come to your Bible study and I will listen, but I don't want to be involved. You've got to just let me be a fly on the wall, listen to what you all say. And she agreed to that. And all of these women were people who lived close by. It was just a neighbourhood Bible study. It wasn't from one particular church. And for a few months, I suppose 6 months or so, they did a Bible study. I followed with them, and then it came to an end, and somebody said to me, Nicky, what do you think of us? And I hadn't really given it much thought until then. And I said, you've all got something that I want. You've got peace and joy, and I haven't got that, and I really want it. And so one of them said, do you know Jesus? And I said, well, yeah, I thought I did. And they said, yes, but actually, do you trust in him? Do you trust what Jesus says is true? And I'd never thought of that before. So they said, the thing to do is Jesus is inviting you to trust him and to invite you into your life. To invite him into your life. So I went home and I thought, okay, I'm going to give it a go. And I just knelt down by my bed and I said, Lord, I want what those women have got. I want the same peace and joy that they have. And I see that when they read in the Bible, it touches them. And I want that too. And as I was kneeling, a song came to mind that I'd learnt as a child, and I'm sure all Christians around the world know it. And it's Just As I Am, Without One Plea. So it goes like this. Just as I am without one plea, but that thy blood was shed for me, and that thou bidst me come to thee. I come, Lord Jesus. So this was a moment when I was filled with the same joy that I'd seen the women in the Bible study all had, that was an experience all of them had. And I was really blown over. I suddenly realised you can believe something, but you can believe it with your head, but you don't build on it, you don't trust it, you think it's a truth, but it doesn't mean anything to you, it doesn't change your life in any way. But that moment I understood that Jesus, he comes in and he changes everything that you are. And I've seen slowly but surely a huge change that's taken place, and some really beautiful things coming out of the change. So being able to put to one side all the things I told you that were in my head, put it down and say, Lord, I'm leaving it with you, Jesus. I can't change it. These are feelings that have come with me all the way from the UK. They've followed me over here. But you can change it. And I remember there was one time I was standing in my sitting room with the two children, and again I thought, I can't do this. I can't look after these children. But this time I wasn't speaking to myself, I was speaking to God. And he clearly spoke back to me and he said, yeah, they're not your children, they're mine. And he said, I'm entrusting them to you and I don't make mistakes. And that was the start of a very different relationship with my children. I wasn't putting on to myself the huge burden of being the perfect parent, which never worked out. It was a release. These children, they've been given to me by God to look after, but they're his, and he's going to make sure that they become what he wants them to be. And that was a huge sense of freedom. And I was able to love my children in a very different way than I had done before then. I can tell you that it's a great joy when I see my children, those children who serve the Lord, who have a living relationship with him. I can't tell you the joy to see how they work together, how they share their experiences with God, how they spend time in prayer together. It's a joy. I remember when I first started going to church as a newborn Christian, somebody came up to me and gave me a little folder saying, Gehoorzaam uw man, which means obey your husband. And I thought, this woman who does she think she is? And of course I obey my husband. Well, you obviously don't know me. Whoa, you're looking at an obedient wife here. I hardly knew the woman, but looking back, I realised that she was sent to give me that booklet, and I read it and I took it very seriously, and I started to see what my role was as being a Christian wife, and how that would change my relationship with my husband, and how by having God first in my life, that would only enrich my relationship with my husband. Yeah, that was amazing. There was one particular incident that I will never forget. There was a Christian lady who I'd known most of the time that I'd been living in Hilo, or in Hilo, and so she knew me very well. And I was visiting her one day, and she said, we started talking about my background, and I realised I'd never told her. She kept asking me questions, and at a certain point she said to me, yeah, it's you've got to forgive your mother, you've got to forgive her. And I went away and I thought, she hasn't heard what I've been saying. It wasn't my fault. It was my mother's fault. This friend of mine obviously didn't understand what I was talking about, but I couldn't let it go. And it actually wasn't that friend who was telling me it was time to forgive my mother. It was God speaking to me. And I sat down and I told my husband I had to write a letter to my stepmother and ask forgiveness. But really, I didn't believe that I needed forgiveness. I thought she needed forgiveness. But I knew that that's not what God was asking of me. So I sat down and I wrote a letter, and I simply asked her forgiveness for all the things that I'd done in the past. And she phoned me up soon after that and asked if she could come and stay with me. And my husband's reaction was he burst out laughing and said, I can't wait to see you two together. And the wonderful witness was that she stayed with me for nearly 2 weeks, and there was no shouting, there was no argument. It was a new relationship, and I'm the only one of the children in my family who ended up with a good relationship with her. And I'm just so grateful. My siblings never understood it because they didn't know what had happened. But they did see that my stepmother was able to embrace my children as her own grandchildren, which I think is amazing. And so that's one of the big things that happened in my life that came through understanding what God was saying to me and following through. Well, it's wonderful actually to be at my age where your time is all your own and there aren't children or jobs or other things pulling on me. So it means that I can spend time in peace and silence that I was never able to do with when I had a busy family. And it's a great joy to spend time just reading the Bible over and over again and listening to God speak to me in so many ways. That's something that I would say that's where the joy is for me. The time that I spend with God, reading His Word.